Welcome to the Queens of Moxie. I'm Mary Kay Campbell, the host of this program, and I'm so excited that you've decided to join us today. Every week, we bring amazing women to our podcast to talk about how they have stepped into joy and reclaimed their moxie and are living their authentic life. I want to get started, but before we do, I want to remind you to subscribe to the weekly email. Simply go to queensofmoxie.com and click on Weekly Inspiration. That way, every Monday morning, you'll get a link to the latest podcast, a beautiful image, and a fabulous quote. It's a great way to start out your week. So let's get started with today's podcast. Welcome to the Queens of Moxie. And today we have someone who I have been following, honestly, for a very long time. She presented at the Tom Tom Festival, which is a festival here in Charlottesville. I don't know, maybe 10 years ago. It's been a long time. And I've just continued to watch her business and what she's doing. And so I'm very, very excited today to have Dr. Casey Kerrigan. And she has got just the most amazing background, y'all. So she got her bachelor's in biology from the University of Chicago. Then she just went to Harvard to get her medical degree, just Harvard. And then she went to UCLA at the same time, to get her master's in kinesiology. I don't know if I said that right. Basically physical medicine. And so she has her bachelor's, her master's, and her doctorate, medical doctorate. And over 13 years ago, she co-started or is co-owner of OESH Shoes. And what I love about this is that she, and we're going to get into this, but she, as a physician, saw the way gait and movement impacted women and wanted to do something specific about that. So we're going to talk about that. But just also so you know, she was the professor and chair of physical medicine and rehab at the University of Virginia. She was also a professor of sports medicine. And something we're going to talk about in a little bit is, in addition to that, she was a professor of mechanical and aerospace engineering. Not sure how those connect, so I'm looking forward to finding out more about that. She has 3 kids. They are grown pretty much, mostly. 26-year-old who is a writer and, just went to Oxford and is working on their first novel. The second one went to Yale and moved here recently to Charlottesville. And then the youngest, Zoe, is doing a gap year right now and traveling the world because, everybody wants to do that. I'm like, you living my dream, right? And so, Casey, I am so excited to have you here today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, likewise. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk. Let's go back, 15 years or so ago. You're working in the medical profession, and you're working in physical medicine and rehab and things like that. And what were the things that you saw that kind of sparked the whole idea for OESH Shoes?
So yeah, in addition to doing the clinical stuff, I was always doing research. So I had a laboratory, we called it a gait laboratory, the study of walking and running. And so since I guess even in residency, I at UCLA and part of getting the kinesiology, I was just fascinated with the act of walking and running. And we knew how the heart works, cardiology, when the muscle comes on, all that kind of stuff. But we had no idea about why muscles come on when they do and the whole biomechanics of walking and running. No one did. It was kind of fascinating. Why do we, we can just see that.
Yeah.
So I started building these high-tech laboratories that had cameras around a room and force plates embedded in the ground where we could measure the forces about each of the joints and measure the muscle activity. So we could really finally, for the first time, understand just the basic physiology of walking and running. So that was in the late 90s. And then in the 2000s, I just did one study after another of walking, running in, I guess, non-disabled subject, people with every type of condition, spinal cord injury, cerebral palsy, traumatic brain injury, and arthritis, osteoarthritis. So, osteoarthritis and knee arthritis in particular causes more physical disability than any other disability. Which is, because people just live with it. But it's incredibly disabling. If you can't get around on your legs, you're not as active. And get, deconditioning, and there's, then heart disease from that. So healthy knees is I've been that's my whole thing, is like, I'm on this planet as a physician to help prevent knee arthritis. I believe I have a real understanding of what contributes to it. And insofar as that is, I've found that footwear is probably the most significant factor predisposing to knee arthritis. So I discovered years ago that high heel shoes increase the loads where we get knee arthritis, and may explain why women have twice as much knee arthritis compared to men. At the time, I felt like, it was high heel shoes. Like, all my articles were in I was on 2020, it was like all the news. It's like the, trivia questions are based on that research paper I did way back then. But what I found out later was it's not just high heel shoes. It's interestingly all women's shoes, basically, including the most sophisticated athletic shoes. And that's when it started getting very like, whoa, that it's not just fashion shoes, but so-called health shoes, comfort shoes that were being marketed kind of as being healthy, and athletic shoes that are doing actually all the wrong things. So I can kind of sum it all up as you sort of think about it, like you take a shoe and the more support that you put in it, you think about it as like putting your arm in a cast, and that's fine if you have like some sort of injury, a fracture, but then imagine, somebody telling you need to wear that shoe for your entire life. That doesn't make any sense. So what happens is it takes away sort of the natural physiology of your foot, and the foot does so much insofar as protecting your joints. So when you basically just shove it in this, one of my colleagues calls it, a foot coffin, put it in this sort of foot coffin, now the foot now no longer can protect the joints in the body. And so, but we were actually measuring it. So we had like one of the only, capabilities, to actually measure this stuff with our gait lab. So we were measuring this stuff, we were publishing it. I guess 2009, 2010, I published a paper that, basically your basic running shoes increase the impact on your knees by up to 50% compared to barefoot. And this was like, it was like sort of the perfect storm of that research paper. Born to Run, there's like, oh my gosh, shoes are awful. But at the same time, I was like, shoes aren't awful. Shoes can be very, very good. One, protecting the bottom of the foot from, stepping on a nail and glass and all that kind of stuff, but also that it can actually provide compliance. If you provide a true spring under the shoe, but not interfere with the foot's natural mechanics, you can actually lower the impact of the joints. So
I've got to ask you, because you said several things that, kind of blow my mind. So first off, I'm a former gymnast. And so I have shot my knees, like I'm 50 years old. And when I get up in the morning and I go down the steps, I literally have to hold onto the handrail because my knees hurt, and I have that snap, crackle, pop constantly when I'm going up and down stairs. So I know I'm predisposed because of the sport. And then, I did gymnastics, diving, and cheerleading. I cheered through college. So I did lots of high impact kind of like jostling of my body. I also have very, very flat feet. And so I broke my foot one time, like this part of my foot, my right toe, I don't know, in the bed of my foot, because I came out of the blocks in sprinter shoes, and it just broke a stress fracture. And so then they said, okay, you need to wear orthotics. So I wore orthotics through high school and college. I outgrew them when I had kids. And so I just have been buying shoes that are specifically designed for overpronation to help support that. And when COVID first hit, for example, I was walking around barefoot all the time and I got plantar fasciitis and hurt like the dickens, started wearing my shoes inside, really, did the things I needed to do to stretch it. And then like last summer, I think I was walking around without shoes again and got it again. And I was like, oh my gosh, I got to wear my shoes. And not anymore, but up until about my mid 40s, I'm 5'1", so I was wearing 2 and 3 inch heels every day. So like everything you've just said, I'm like, okay, gymnastics destroyed my knees. I've been wearing shoes that have the arch support in them, and when I go barefoot, I get plantar fasciitis. And I wore heels for 20 years. So tell me, now that I'm like the perfect test case of what not to do, tell me why it is that it's totally turning everything I've heard on its ear to wear things that are flat and not, like, and you and I talked about this. I didn't buy your shoes for a really long time. I can't wait to get them. Actually, they should be coming any day now because I was scared. I'm like, they're flat. I can't wear those. It's going to cause problems. So tell me the science and everything behind that.
So there's a couple things. One, just your joints, like irrespective of the conditioning of your feet, which we'll talk about that in a second. But if you put any kind of support in there, we can measure an increase in the impact immediately. This isn't something like over time. So when you're wearing those high heel shoes, definitely you were causing impact to your knees. And even when you were wearing those orthotics, you were applying a lot more stress to your knees where we get arthritis, just wearing those orthotics. So, but now let's talk about the foot. So, and that's the thing is that, so your foot also over time, wearing supportive shoes or high heel shoes, whatever, anything that's not flat, you basically have deconditioned the heck out of your foot. Your foot is just like jelly, it does. The plantar fascia normally should be a nice, healthy, tissue, but because it's not allowed to stretch and even like shoes, like you put like a insert in them, an orthotic, it actually cuts up your blood supply. So over time, you're not even getting the right, amount of blood to that plantar fascia. So you have sort of this unhealthy tissue. So your foot's weak, you're prone to stress fractures, you're prone to plantar fasciitis. And you look at cultures of the world that, that don't wear shoes at all, like the incidence of plantar fasciitis is about 0, and it really, it's because it's over time, you have this sort of this like disease state of a plantar fascia. So it's typical that, you go barefoot, if you've been wearing, these support shoes all your life, and then you go barefoot, like, yep, plantar fascia is going to happen,
Yeah.
But the good news is that, plantar fasciitis does eventually go away. For all of you who have plantar fasciitis, just hang in there. It will sort of go away no matter what you do. One, and two, I work in a nursing home now that, nobody's in the nursing home because of plantar fasciitis. It all it goes away. What we're left with is knee arthritis. That's what you got to be sort of worried about. So as far as the feet go, it's kind of like you got to like just sort of condition them, and it's like it's sort of like a workout, over time. So your plantar fascia, it's a acute flare up. It's like it might hurt, and you might not want to go barefoot, or you might even just go barefoot for a little bit, but then get back into your supportive shoes, for a little bit, sort of just kind of, and then sort of wean out of them. Right. And I feel like it, and it's not something that like weeks. It may even take a few years.
Wow.
But it's not that difficult, because it's not like you have to remember to go to the gym every day. It's just putting on some shoes. So my advice is you kind of ease your feet into it, as far as the barefoot goes. So, and barefoot of course is flat. Knowing that that's very difficult for, people, I think that's what I worked on developing in OESH is, yes, we're perfectly flat, but to develop a truly springy material that is very different than walking, barefoot, so that you do have sort of that spring. I mean, I'm all for barefoot, but you got to have some pretty strong feet to do it, and then I guess we go, sort of that extra step of having that spring, which then, reduces the impact, regardless of your foot condition, regardless of how healthy your feet are, how flat-footed you are, how high arch, it doesn't matter. You're still, you got that spring is going to reduce the impact on your joints above. So yeah, so that's kind of the science, and it goes, so against what, people have thought for years, and you've got an entire shoe industry, all the marketing, everything is all about, how much support it has.
Yeah.
So, it's like, oh, and you see reviews. That's why we can't sell anything, we can't sell on Amazon, because it's like, shoes are reviewed by, oh, how much support do we have? And since we have zero by definition,
Right.
we can't even get out of the block. It's a very, very different concept.
Well, and so I'm sitting here thinking, okay, I have Birkenstocks and Tevas that I wear like all summer long. And then I've got my Asics that are specifically for overpronation. I stopped wearing heels. You'll be glad to know, like 6 or 8 years ago. So it was probably early 40s when I stopped. It actually happened because I was cleaning a gutter and I stretched too far and the ladder fell out from under me. And I landed on my
ladder.
No. I was in tennis shoes, but
Okay.
but I landed on the asphalt driveway. And because I was a gymnast, I landed and rolled, but I sprained my ankle really badly. And so if I ever wear heels, my inner knee hurts. And I do have a muscle imbalance, like my quads are stronger than my hams. And, I know I need to strengthen them. Like okay, I've been to a lot of physical therapy over my lifetime. I know, and having been a competitive gymnast and cheerleader and stuff, I know my body pretty well and I know what it's doing. But that was like the pivotal moment of, okay, I'm no longer going to wear these high heels because it just hurts too much. I'd known for a while that it was really a bad idea. But I've been intentionally buying shoes that are more supportive, thinking I was doing something good.
That's good, right?
So,
Yeah.
for people who are listening and maybe they've been doing the same kind of thing. And I also have always bought, not always, most of my adult life, bought quality shoes, because I did find that quality shoes are my feet are going to feel better in them, wider toe bed and but even my flats, you'd be happy there's no support from my heart. But so are you saying that if we really truly want to build up that endurance and build up that conditioning for our feet so that they can learn to support themselves, is what it sounds like I'm hearing,
right.
that we would gradually introduce shoes like OESH that are going to be built specifically to provide that springy platform for our feet that are going to allow them to really, if I think about, when I was doing physical therapy for my TBI, I was doing balance things when, you're using all aspects of your feet, and your body, especially when you're closing your eyes, right? That was super fun. Especially and then I would do the Bosey ball where, it's like the half ball and you stand on it and you close your eyes and you have to take a medicine ball around clockwise. And I mean, my whole foot was going, let me balance here. So is that the best approach for women listening to gradually?
Right. So gosh, we've been talking about support, increasing the impact on your joints, but also just sort of the so obvious things, is having a narrow toe box. Okay. So, that, all shoes, I have no idea. Well, no, I do have an idea, that's like really out there, and crazy. Why shoes have always had been pointy and not provide enough room for your toes. And so that, of course, contributes, that increases the the loads on your joints, but it also weakens your foot, deforms the foot, doesn't allow again, isn't allow the plantar fascia to stretch and contract like it should, all that good stuff. So yeah, so shoes that have a nice wide toe box are good. So your Birkenstocks or your Tevas, sandals, of course, they're great. They are not confining your toes. That's separate than the support that, unfortunately the Tevas and Birkenstocks, and really I nothing against those shoes. It's just, that's just like general construction of shoes, is to have all of this kind of support or contouring under the foot. So ideally you want something that's flat, springy, but also allows lots of room for the foot to do what it's going to do. So, all that stuff you're doing on the balance ball with your toes, you can actually do that inside your shoe.
So I love the fact that OESH shoes are environmentally conscious. They're made right here in Central Virginia, and they're custom made to order. So tell us how you developed this. I love the fact that you're using, I mean, it's not new technology now, but when you started, it was fairly new technology.
Yeah. When we started, what did not exist, and those printers, that's what makes our shoes. So when we first started, they did not exist. We basically had to not just build them ourselves, but invent them to be able to make the springy material. So I had in my head what this material was, but the technology quite didn't exist. That's where all the engineering came. It came in handy. I was a professor in engineering because of the gate laboratory stuff, the measuring stuff in 3D and the forces and all that kind of stuff. So I've always had a lot in the kinesiology background, but I've always had a strong mechanical engineering bent, I guess, from like the human body. But now it was like, okay, now we actually, straight up mechanical engineering, no bio really, in building these machinery and equipment and all that kind of stuff. So that's what, I built a factory first in Charlottesville, and then we just recently moved. It's awesome because we sort of expanded. We're now make it in these big barns. So it's funny, I don't want to even call it a factory anymore. It's just it's a barn, and and we have 3D printers, and our energy is from solar. We even collect our rainwater, and have a compost toilet, and I mean, you can't find anything more sustainable. People talk about sustainability, but I mean, we make all our stuff from these recyclable little pellets, and that's it. That creates the sole. And then as far as the upper part, which you'll see when you get your shoes, and I'll show a pair, is made on this knitting machine, and it just has like a bunch of needles that go back and forth. But this is the same type of machine that they have in China that makes, all of, Nike's Flyknit uppers. And, so many shoes are made now with knitting machines, but unfortunately it's all done overseas. And we said, well, we're going to do this right here.
Yeah.
So we do here. I mean, the programming is complex, so we spend a lot of time on the programs, and as we do with the 3D printing. But we probably have one of the only knitting machines probably in Virginia.
So the bottom part's made from recyclable plastic pellets?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And then the top is knit with yarn or
get in the
thread.
US. Yeah. So everything, so basically everything's is made from yarn and pellets. That's the raw materials. So it's not like we're assembled, we get everything we assemble. I mean, everything is right here local, which is really fun because it's as sustainable as can be. And one of the things when I sort of had this idea of making shoes, that involved going to China a lot. Making a shoe is the most toxic thing there possibly could be. And it doesn't matter if you're using, recycled or natural materials, whatever. It's really the manufacturing process that is so toxic. And it's just bonding things together, and involves these, toxic primers, heat tunnels, these factory workers painting this glue on. It is really, really awful and wasteful, because you typically make, gobs of shoes, and a lot of them won't sell, or they sit on shelves, or they're,
Oh,
the waste, it's incredible. So
okay.
that's another really great thing is, we make on demand. Everything is, there really is no waste. Yeah. So it's fun doing that. But it's been a process. I mean, it took a long time to sort of to get to where we are. Figuring out the 3D printers was the main thing. And then for knitting to come along, knitting, people weren't really knitting until, like, I guess 2015-ish,
Okay.
2014, 2015, the uppers. And now, it's great. I think knitting, because you can knit everything sort of three-dimensional.
Right.
And so everything is done. It's not, we don't use adhesives for anything we make here. We crochet the tops on. So everything is done by the knitting machine, and the knitting machine can, just spit out a pair in like a couple minutes.
Okay.
Whereas the printers will take about an hour and a half per pair. But then we have, we got tons of printers, so that's not an issue.
Right.
Yeah, so really, like, just labor is crocheting the uppers to the soles.
Yeah.
And it's about 20 minutes to crochet a pair on. So so I love that it's just such a clean, like, that's our only sort of
Yeah.
manufacturing kind of, some people who like to crochet find that fun. And we just think it's just an awesome way to employ, because it's women who are going
Right.
to do that. So it's a great way to employ women who can't maybe find a job, or can't work, can't go into work, but can do something at home.
Yeah.
So we were working with the International Rescue Committee, unfortunately all before COVID, but these women couldn't, they had to watch small children, or an elderly parent could do this. It was just, it's great. So I love it. And now we just have moved to Scottsville, and I'm just excited about, the women that we're going to have. There's some of these sort of senior groups. It's just, it's a really great way to sort of empower women.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. I mean, you saw this need, you saw the data behind it and why it was important. So 3D printers didn't exist. So you created it. Then you use this recycled material, the pellets, to create the floor bed. And then the weave, the machine comes along to knit, and you employ that. And then you employ women to crochet it on, and you're building, and everything that you're doing with it is environmentally conscious. I mean, it's such an amazing testament to what we can do as women. And I recently saw a Ford commercial, I think it was Ford, that said it was a Ford F-150 or Explorer, I think maybe it was an Explorer, designed specifically for men. And it was you're watching it, you're like, what in the world? Because, and then you find out that it doesn't have GPS, and it doesn't have side mirrors, and it doesn't have seat belts, and it doesn't have backup cameras, and like all these things, because women invented them. And I thought,
Oh my
that's
God.
fantastic. I'll put it in the show notes, and I'll send it to you, because initially I was like, what in the world are they doing? And they released it on International Women's Day. But I think that sometimes people discount women, and what you look at is women see a problem and they figure out how to solve it.
Right.
And I love that you're doing that, and that you have this idea of, we're going to employ these women, we're going to help these women they help us and we help them. It's fantastic. It really,
Yeah.
really is. So how many shoes can you like put out on a
So,
regular basis?
so yeah, we can like I say, let's shoot. We have uh there's 12 printers, I guess, going, they can go sort of around the clock. But that involves coming over. It makes it easy because I can come over from the house over here to turn the printers on. So we can't keep them going all night. But typically, yeah, it's like an hour and a half, per pair, times whatever that 12 is. And then we've got in the works, 12 more printers, like in pieces that are ready to be assembled at any time if the demand gets there. So we have a really good capacity, because you think about like a factory in China, they can make 2,000 pairs in a day. Well, we can't do that, but we'll make we could make, I don't know, 150, 200 pairs if we wanted, but most importantly, those 200 pairs would be on somebody's feet. They're not going to waste.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think our capabilities are pretty darn good. Yeah, we're getting a second knitting machine soon, although that doesn't seem to, like I said, it spits out in, matter a couple minutes or so. But yeah, so I'm going to show you just a pair so you can kind of see what we're
Yeah.
find one that's got some color to it so you can see.
Yeah, I ordered boring ones. I wanted neutral that could go with anything.
I know we have all these fancy colors and everything,
Yeah.
but like 70% of people want just black, right?
No, mine are like a pearl,
Oh yeah,
like
yeah.
a
You got
rose color.
Oh yeah. I gotta show you. I can yeah. It's probably one of these. This
It
color.
is. I'm so
Yeah,
excited about
yeah.
it.
So the sole
Yeah.
is printed. It's got these springs, 3D printed. You can't really kind of see in the sun, but yeah, it's like that's what 3D printing can do that typical manufacturing can't. Is that we can have this intricate spring structure in the sole that it's impossible to make any other way. So that gives this incredible spring. Um, and then I'm going to show this shoe because maybe you can see a little bit
Yeah.
more. So this part is 3D printed. This back piece is also 3D printed. And then this part up here is knit on the knitting machine, and
Yeah.
it's got this like stretch to it,
Yeah.
and that really kind of holds the foot. So the whole design of the shoe, and you can see, of course, the wide toe box,
Yeah.
allowing the room for your toes and everything. But we really, in this style, we wanted to create something that looked like a high heel shoe, right?
Yeah.
And because you think about what are the characteristics of a high heel shoe, it's like people say, it lengthens your leg, it makes your leg look longer. So a Dorsey flat, does that because it basically it extends and makes your leg look longer when
Yeah.
you're wearing it. The problem with Dorsey flats is that it doesn't stay on your foot very well.
Yeah.
But that's what, so we developed this heel that it basically just it grabs your heel like no other material really can do,
Nice.
which is really fun. So it's kind of like people say, oh, like a suction cup. So this is actually like a Dorsey, it stays on your foot. The other thing is that it doesn't have this sort of rigid
Yeah, I love that.
at the top. So your foot, it's much like a sock, your toe,
Right.
so that basically it kind of just holds it on
Yeah.
your the other
So
thing
people
why
don't get blisters on the back of their heel from
right,
that.
right, yeah, because it actually grabs.
So it
Yeah,
doesn't move as you
yeah,
walk. That's
yeah.
great.
Yeah, so the only way it's going to move is if you've got too big of a size. So
Yeah.
and then but so if it you got the right size, you're good to go. And then having the wide toe area. One of the reasons, I guess, one reason why there's pointed toes in women's shoes is it's kind of out of convenience because it basically holds the shoe onto your foot because it's like
Mhm.
an awful thought,
Yeah.
like so it's like squeezing. So we've gotten around it by having this, this special knit material, this sort of
Mhm.
3D knit material that just kind of, holds the shoe on in combination with the heel, but still allowing like the toes to do their thing. So yeah, so this is our Dorsey flat, and I'm just excited because when I started off, I just want to make healthy shoes, and all we could really do is make sneakers, and that were perfectly flat, but it really took all this sort of technology and development to finally, have like our very first dress shoe.
Yeah.
And of course that's what I wanted since, like, I guess, was it 1998 when I did the high heel shoe. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, what can you wear that's going to be attractive,
Right.
uh wear in the workplace and all that kind of stuff, that that's going to actually be beneficial. So
I love
yeah.
it. I
Yeah, so
love
that's it. Then we do have a ballet flat.
it.
We have
Mhm.
two shoes, basically two shoes still that are made overseas, just because we've finally figured out how to do it in in a sustainable way. Again, using knitting. So our ballet flat, and our athletic shoe, I would say, or I guess I should, all-purpose shoe, is actually all knit. It's basically two pieces. It's the upper that's all knit is one piece, no seams, no waist, and then the sole that is one piece. And the adhesion is such that we just have no primers in it, just a water-based adhesive that goes on the bottom. So it's the most sustainable, healthy way, I guess, you could possibly make a mass-produced shoe.
I love
So
it. Oh my gosh, I love it. And I'm like, oh, I just got new shoes. So I need to wait till they wear out my walking shoes. I don't run because of my flat feet, but I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have to try those next. So um, I am hard on shoes. Like I'm really hard on them. How do these hold up?
So the soles are 3D printed ones. They just don't wear out.
Yeah.
They're crocheted on. They've got these holes in the sole,
Mm-hmm.
never
Mm-hmm.
pulled out. Yeah, we talk about, like, you know the stitching or the upper will wear out before the sole for
Yeah.
sure.
That's what.
Um, the our athletic shoes, again, they're the soles, these are molded, the ones that we make overseas, same material but not 3D printed. They'll have, they wear, I guess, like a typical shoe.
Yeah.
They'll wear, eventually the tread will wear down. I mean, but a long time, but here's the good thing is, unlike like a running shoe or your typical athletic shoe that they use a compound called ethylene vinyl acetate, EVA for short. That EVA compresses, and that's why they say, you shouldn't wear your shoes more than certain, hundreds of miles. It loses its spring, even though it
Right.
doesn't really have spring. It's cushioning, whatever. But the outsole typically looks good, so people just keep wearing them, which is like the worst. That's even worse than wearing a brand new pair of shoes, is because now you've created these contours that are basically more supportive and increase impact on your joints even further.
Yeah.
But our shoes don't do that because it's one material. It's a unit sole. It's not like a million pieces all put together.
Yeah.
And it just sort of wears out from the outside in.
Wow.
So it gives you the same spring, same biomechanics through the entire life of the shoe.
Nice.
So
Nice.
to me, that's the most important thing. So yeah, you can go hundreds and hundreds of miles, and if you want to go 1,000 or two, you'll get down to, not much tread on there, but like, who cares? We got people who wear our shoes who like have no problem with that.
Great. That's great. So I'm going to put in the show notes your website and how they can order shoes if they want to, and your bio and more information about it, because I just think it's great. I like to ask my guests one last question, and that is, I like to ask, what advice would you give to women who are listening to this? So you could be talking about it from a physician perspective, you could be talking about it from a shoe perspective, what, or just the fact that you saw a need and went out and figured out how to fix it. So it's really up to you, but what advice would you give?
You know, I know this is like, when people think about it, so I don't have an MBA. My husband, though, he does, and he helps with the business, but I really call the shots. And if I were to listen to people who say, all those things, like what you do for a small business, these are the things that you're supposed to do, and just, thinking about your profits and all that garbage. Like I really couldn't do that. Everything I've done is really just been from the heart. It hasn't been about, oh, we have to sell so many units this year. Like that's, I think, one of the things, business is like, we got to get our revenues to be this, and then we have to see our growth do this, and whatever. It's like, as long as we can keep getting by, and keeping costs low, but as always doing things passionately, then I think we're good. And in that way, it's like building these 3D printers. It's like, I'm not saying we're going to buy these factories overseas or whatever, these huge. I'm just like, we build one printer at a time. And I guess getting that knitting machine was a big thing. We had grants from the National Science Foundation, but again, I think when you kind of just think about, just do something that you believe in, that you think is the right thing to do, and don't worry about it, you're going to be happier, sort of more true to yourself. And I'm just so happy doing what I'm doing. So I think, yeah, maybe about all that small business stuff, or like what is very, I don't know, sort of guy driven in my mind, like a woman, that's like, everything we do is like what I think, like, I don't know, like if a woman would do. The decisions I've made with sustainability is very, I don't know, it's just, it comes from the heart, is listening to your womanly, motherly instincts, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and you're exactly right. People, for so long, um, even still, decisions are made based on men. I mean, women weren't part of clinical trials until the 1980s. They're just now starting to introduce crash test dummies that are sized for a woman. Even the temperature of offices is based on the average male, and it's cooler than what women would put it at, because they run warmer. I don't know, there's science behind it. And so, I think as women, we are on the cusp of really making significant changes, and being galvanized, unfortunately, by some of the changes that are happening in our society, and in government, that are changing our rights, is part of what's galvanizing women. I mean, I look at the girls who disappeared in Iran because they were dancing, and how girls in Afghanistan can't go to school, and like all these things that are happening across the globe, to women is frightening, and what's happening in our country is frightening, and so I think that women are, I hope, we're at a point where we're saying enough is enough. We're gonna change some things here, and I like the fact that you are making decisions based on what's right for you and what's right in your heart, not
Yeah.
necessarily what business practice says you should do or shouldn't do. So I think that's fabulous. Casey,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Yeah, of course, of course.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, it's been so interesting. And like I said, you totally took everything I've been told for a long, long time and just flipped it on its ear. And so I'm like, I can't wait to get my shoes and start wearing them and see how it goes.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us on the Queens of Moxie podcast. I hope that you found it inspirational and that it helps you to think about how you can step into joy and live your authentic life. And remember, we have a weekly email so that you don't miss any of these episodes. Plus, it starts your Monday out with an inspirational quote and a beautiful image. If you haven't subscribed yet, go to queensofmoxie.com and click on Weekly Inspiration. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you again next week.